I started the camera.
As good as
Oh, yeah.
testing.
Testing 1, 2.
Should we do the light like intermission light? one minute left. Find your seats.
That's right.
Flash them like
Yeah.
intermission at the theater.
Yeah, just put 2 lights up here and just flick them up
Yeah.
and down.
We can sell cashews at the front door.
Yes.
Village is in session.
Yes.
I don't think we could sell water, though. Maybe bottled water.
Too soon?
Too soon.
All those seats are easy.
That was
Yeah,
a pretty loud cough there, Dave.
That place is it's for the camera.
It's all for show.
Boy, I'm impressed at the number of people that came to our meeting.
You know why they're here. Come on.
Because this is my first
Yeah.
meeting back.
Oh yeah. Everyone's been waiting for Mal to be back. I mean,
I'm sure.
You're not good trustee yet? You went to watch the cross country meet and ran right alongside.
You get back to it.
Really? You did?
Thank you.
I used to coach cross country in my teaching days. Yeah, the other guy that I coached with, we had what we called coach friendly courses and coach unfriendly courses. So
All right, it's 6 p.m. Let's call this regular village board meeting to order. Would you all join me, please, in a moment of silence? And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can't believe we didn't hill tear.
Madam Clerk, do you have the roll?
Trustee Mann.
Present.
Trustee Gerger.
Present.
Trustee Fountain.
Here on the phone.
Trustee Detmers.
Here.
Trustee Mao.
Here.
Trustee Churchill.
present.
Village President Kimsey.
Present. Could I have a motion to allow Trustee Fountain to participate remotely?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Gerger's made a motion, second by Trustee Mann. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it stands. With no objection, I would like to move right to item 1 under new business and recognize these young men that are here and get them all back. They look like they're eagerly waiting at the dinner table. So if no one objects, could I have a motion, please, to put a resolution on the table recognizing the achievements of the Glenwood High School Boys Cross Country Team, 2018 IHSA Class 2A State Champions?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mann has made a motion, second by Trustee Gerger. Whereas the members of the corporate authorities of the Village of Chatham are pleased to congratulate the Glenwood High School Boys Cross Country Team on the occasion of winning the 2018 IHSA Class 2A High School State Championship. And whereas the 153 points scored for the team at the November 11th, 2018 state event earned Glenwood their first boys cross country state title in school history. And whereas the top 5 runners posted an average time of 15 minutes 33 seconds, the fastest times in school history. And whereas the state meet featured all state honors for Dathan Mayton, who finished 7th overall, and Dre Mayton, who finished 14th overall. And whereas the hardworking and dedicated members of the Glenwood High School Boys Cross Country Team are Dathan Mayton, Dre Mayton, Graham Turk, Cooper Peterson, Thomas Herbst, Cameron Smith, Aiden Peterson, Grant Edwards, Joe Radloff, David Thomas, and Nathan Michael, led by head coach Mike Garber and assistant coaches Caleb Cox and Grant Kaiser. Now therefore, be it resolved by the President and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Chatham, Sangamon County, Illinois, that we congratulate the members of the Glenwood High School Boys Cross Country Team on the occasion of winning the Class 2A IHSA State Championship and wish them many more years of continued success. And be it further resolved that a suitable copy of this resolution be presented to the GHS Boys Cross Country Team as an expression of our admiration and respect. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Congratulations. Now, we do have copies of this for each one of you. All you have to do is give us a medal. We'll give you a piece of paper. So. No, congratulations, guys. Can you all come up here so we can get a picture with you and the board before you all head off to dinner?
Everybody's here was good.
Thanks, Bonnie. I've been working on mine all day. Come on around here.
Turk, go down a little bit. You're still taller than all of us.
This guy's
Dave, you may have to move.
coach.
Yeah, coaches.
Might have to climb up on the table.
You guys have got to slide down in front.
Yeah.
No, let him stand there. Yeah.
God, they're tall.
I know. All right, we get them all? Congratulations. Nice job. Congrats. Appreciate it.
You had to take less steps than everybody.
That's how you did so well. Thanks, Coach. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Congratulations very much.
Coach,
I give you
nice job,
all the
boys.
way around.
Mike.
If it's not enough, let us know.
They'll keep those forever, we know. How are you? What?
Jim Michael.
Well, he's
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I didn't know you were either.
Your manners.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'll sneak out the
It was really bizarre.
When you walked in, it was like, those two.
Yeah.
He could come in and present as him.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Kid, what is he, like 6'11"?
I mean, we're elevated. Huh? Was it elevated? Some of the kids are as tall and we're elevated.
Turk's a big kid.
That's who the parents.
I know.
If you're across the country parent, you got to be.
Well, Dad's 6'5" and Mom's 6 foot. You should be.
It's all part of the gig.
Caitlin did
Wish
that.
I had those genetics.
She was always.
I just
Don't,
started
Ryan.
I was dead coaching.
My daughter ran cross country. She was always like, I just, the boys only remember 2 names: the girl that comes in first all the time, and me. Yes, you told me that.
That's strategy.
All right, I think we can return to the regular order of business tonight. We have any public announcements this evening?
Tough act to follow after that. So
Yes, Mr. Marconi. What did you win, Mr. Marconi?
give away stuff. So
Should be on. Hold a little closer.
my name is Paul Marconi. I am the co-director of the Chatham Soccer Association. I am here tonight to give a little brief overview of what we have and what we look for in the future for the CSA. And then I have a gift for the village. So right now we and I mean Jay Leip and I are both co-directors of the league. It is a recreational league that we have for youth here in Chatham, as well as any other community that would like to join. We're not strictly just Chatham, but we do play at the village of South Park. But we want to continue to grow as an organization, providing a quality youth soccer program for everyone in Chatham and the surrounding communities to enjoy. Jay Leip and I also plan on providing monetary donations to area charities and organizations to help build a more cooperative community. We want to provide funds to maintain and improve the soccer fields out at the South Park, which this year we've provided funds for fertilizer, grub control, seeding, and the irrigation. one of the things we'd like to see done is the poles are already up for the lights there at the soccer fields. But one thing that we'd like to do with the money that we raise from the rec program is to be able to put up actual lights, have the electricity run through there, be able to provide or help support the village in any way that we can to sponsor events, put events on, if there's anything that we could do there, but be able to put maybe even have a soccer venue there at night at some point. Jay Lipe and I have talked a little bit about how we have the lights at the soccer field, obviously at the high school right now, but he's limited to have only 4 teams in a soccer tournament right now, where he used to have 8. Because we used to have 2 venues of lights. We used to have back behind the intermediate school, we had lights, and then the new soccer stadium. Now we only have 1. So one thing that he was looking at possibly doing is being able to host a high school tournament for either the boys and or the girls at a lighted facility, which would bring other people from other communities into the park to be able to have it either at night or during the day on a Saturday or a Sunday. And obviously we'd schedule that around to make sure it didn't conflict with any other programs or events that the village is going on. We want to provide opportunities for businesses to sponsor the Junior Titan Soccer Academy as well as the CSA Recreational League. Fortunately for us, we've already had a few sponsors. The real estate group has done it. PowerWorks Fitness has done it. So be able to have other people get in with the recreational program, be able to show their support of our youth academy and our youth program. We want to create possible positions for paid staff, such as secretaries, event coordinators, field painters, field liners, be able to give people those resources, possibly those jobs for people if we continue to grow as what we have been growing. At some point, we'd love to have the fact that Jay Lipe and I would not be able to do this solely on just by ourselves, but be able to provide that. We also want to provide the high school students with volunteer opportunities for service hours, as well as educational resources for a career possibly in sports management. One of the great things that I was the YMCA sports director for 9 years, and I've had several interns that got full-time jobs at colleges, other venues, to where it was a sports management program. We could be able to tell them how to execute a budget, how to put together a budget, how to, do schedules, how to, recruit, coaches, put together meetings, have coaches meetings, be able to find equipment, how much equipment, and run the budget for all of that, as well as bring a cooperative in a community setting to bring everybody together for the betterment of all the kids in the program. So one of the things that Jay Lipe and I have done, and going back to one of my points here, was to provide monetary donations. We have done this in the past, and we wish to continue to do this, and we will be doing this with other groups as well. But myself and Jay Lipe, with the funds that we have raised and what we had for this season, we would like to give the Village of Chatham a $1,000 check donation toward I heard there's some restrooms that need to be repaired, but if we want to put it toward just the restrooms or any other program or any other needs that desperately needs to be out there at South Park. But one thing that we want to do is give the Village of Chatham, because you guys are so graciously letting us be able to run a soccer program for our kids out there. We want to be able to give some money back to whatever you feel is fit, just in our good faith. And we will continue to provide a good quality program, the best of our ability. And we thank you for having us there. And Coach Detmers has been coaching for us for a couple of times, and Trustee Scherschel has a child in our program. So I think there's a lot of soccer people up here as trustees anyhow. So it's good to see that I see some of you on Wednesday nights or Saturday mornings already. So we greatly appreciate it, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Oh, you're short.
See, I am short. Hold still for Joe. He's want to get up here. What are you going to do?
Here, come here, guys. Yeah, come on. Why not? It's your marketing material.
I'm good. You guys got
You're
it.
good.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Much appreciated, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Spelled Kimsey wrong.
Thank you.
Here, Pat, before I lose this.
Jeremy is not as proficient at this as Trustee Mouse, and he hung the phone up. I want to laugh at him before I get it.
Now we'll wait till he's back on the phone.
Yeah. Hooked to my phone. My phone is.
All right. Any additional public announcements? Moving on to public comment, Ms. Billick.
Yeah.
The only comment I have at this point, because
This is
got
to-
into warrants, correct?
To the this section is for items that are on our agenda.
That are on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, the first thing that, thank you. The first thing I've got to say that I'm a little bit disappointed on is that the village paid, and I'm not saying this person was not worth it, because they probably were. They paid $80 for a plaque for a long time planning commission member. Do you remember the uproar about the police department?
Correct. That's Bonnie. That's a just to nip it right quickly. That's something the trustees have said we're paying for. We asked the village to facilitate it for us, and that reimbursement comes from us.
So, but it's on the warrant,
Right, because the bill came to the village, so the bill comes to us, and it will be reimbursed.
and the trustees will be reimbursing it.
You've got it.
Just like the police officers reimbursed for our retirement.
You've got it.
Okay, good point. Thank you for the answer, because normally we don't get those,
That
okay?
up a little closer to your mouth. Yeah, there you go.
The only other thing is I will give kudos to Pat for answering my last set of questions that I had about the warrants a couple of weeks ago. He did call me back. It was a little uncomfortable because I had to take an early break to take your call, but it was well worth it. The only question I have is, who was in the room with you?
I don't think anybody.
Oh, yeah, there was, because somebody was doing this when you were telling me. So,
People come in and out of my door all the time, whether I'm on the phone or not. So I don't know.
okay.
I have no
It
idea.
sounded like they were feeding you, and I just wanted to see if there was somebody else. So if you call me again, would you please let me know if somebody's in the room that I can question them as well?
Sure.
Okay. So I can or cannot ask about warrants on this.
Yes, those are on the agenda.
Good. I've just got a couple. Really, I have about 3 pages, but I've only got a couple that are bothering me. Okay. First of all, we have paid Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly. I'm not disagreeing with it. Okay. Over $1,700 for engineering for the water tower project. Water tower project. Was that the painting project? Because we paid them $17,000 to tell us we need it painted, and then we paid the contractor $340,468 plus some pennies to the original contract price. That bothers me, because is it the price that we're paying, or is it the original contract price? So those sort of confused me a little bit. Sorry, maybe it's just me. And then the magnetic locator that cost $850, I needed one of those for one of my properties. It says it's for finding pins on new construction. Is this new construction for the village of Chatham or for new subdivisions? And if it's for the new subdivisions, why are we buying this instead of the contractors having to find the pins for those properties? I have an issue with that, because I have to go out and buy one unless you guys loan it to me to do my lot on 2nd Street. So that was a problem. And then Kinney Contractors did some patching on a street for over $17,000. That sounds a little steep for patching. Now, if they did a total overlay, I fully understand. And I know my 5 minutes is going to be up, even though I'm not even close to being done. But the only other issue I had, and you guys all know that I have an issue with spending $500,000 on a Vector truck, because I have a little knowledge with that. We paid a gentleman close to $3,000 for a sewer backup. Probably very deserving of it if he's had a sewer backed up, because if any of you guys have ever witnessed one, you don't want one in your house. But what I'm curious about is with a $500,000 Vector truck, are we regularly jetting sewer lines throughout the village on a maintenance program, or are we only using it when we're called out with an issue? So that's a very important thing because I want to make sure that we're getting our $500,000 usage out of this Vector truck. So that is the primary answer I'd like to see within the next few days so that I can share that with anybody else that has problems. And your 311 information thing, update it and let the citizens know that if they're having experiences with a sewer backup, or it seems like they are, that they are more than welcome to call the Village of Chatham and have them come out and check the sewer lines. Because I know for a fact, a friend of mine that lived here, still does, but in a different house, they went to clean the wrong sewer. So I want to know that, yeah, give me that and I'll talk to you later about that, okay? But I want to make sure that this Vector truck is being used to the fullest extent so that I don't have to keep coming up here and complaining about a $500,000 Vector truck. And I'll save my questions for later. Thank you.
Ms. Parker, is this you on here as well?
That was me.
That was you twice?
You like that? I was hoping that would make you laugh, President.
Well, it made me laugh, but then we were trying to figure out, well, if it's, you're going to have to tell her what you signed her up as.
I signed up as the village paying the village paying. I was going to put more, but I just left it as the village paying.
All right. Additional comments regarding just agenda items at this point. And I know we have some others that would like to talk in just general, and that comes at kind of the back end here shortly. So, hearing none, I have a motion to put the consent agenda on the table.
Make that motion.
Trustee Miles made a motion. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Second by Trustee Churchill. Discussion or questions regarding the warrants or the minutes? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Mann.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Trustee Fountain.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Mao.
Yes.
Trustee Churchill.
Yes.
No old business. Item 2 now under new business is a resolution granting the Friends of the Park use of Chatham Community Park for Light of the Park. Could I have a motion, please?
Make that
So
motion.
moved.
Trustee Miles made a motion. Of a second.
Second.
Second by Trustee Churchill. Discussion or questions regarding the resolution? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Mann.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Mao.
Yes.
Trustee Fountain.
Yes.
Trustee Churchill.
Yes.
Should throw you off with the order change. Item 3 is a resolution granting a reduction in the letter of credit amount for Cardinal Ridge first and second editions. I have a motion to put this on the table.
I'll move.
Trustee Detmers made a motion. Of a second.
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Gerger. Pat or Jim, either one you want to cover this if you guys, or does anybody have any questions? Let's start there.
Essentially, that subdivision, they bonded everything for what, both plats? The first two? All three?
It's the main complex for the apartments, and then the single-family homes, and then also the Garvey Lane portion, which came in as plat number 3. So it's plats 1, 2, and 3. The resolution is for the reduction of letter of credit for primarily the Garvey Lane cul-de-sac. At the time that they established the letter of credit, the cul-de-sac was not completed. The underground work, storm sewer, sewer work, services to the property lines were included and completed and tested and certified, but the curb and gutter and the pavement was not completed at that point. So since then, the developer's engineers have requested a reduction in the letter of credit to cover the curb and gutter and the pavement work and the restoration within the public right-of-way for Garvey Lane. Outstanding items that still exist is sidewalk and another round of restoration due to installation of sidewalk for public improvements within plats 1, 2, and 3. So,
And we're holding $74,000.
So that allows them to move forward with the sidewalks and all those things you just mentioned.
the sidewalks will be put in per the individual properties as those are sold.
Okay.
As developers take two different approaches. Some put them
Right.
in right away. Some will wait.
I know we've had that discussion on changing that process, but
Sure.
Yeah.
And so at this point, they are putting that responsibility back on the individual property owner to install the sidewalks as the individual lots are developed. but the village retains a letter of credit because it is a public improvement. So, you know, for whatever reason the developer goes default or there's a need to have those sidewalks in immediately, then that letter of credit can be exercised and the village is covered to make those final public improvements that were guaranteed at the beginning of the project.
And we'll still have that following this vote?
Correct.
That is correct. As Pat indicated, $74,000 will be allocated to sidewalk improvements and final restoration within the public right-of-way.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
are we requiring the developer to put in the ADA sidewalk ramps, or is that being left up to the property owners who are on corner lots or they're adjacent to the streets?
Okay, so new developments, starting with Glendale Unit 4, we've implemented that plan to have the developers put in the ADA ramps with the truncated domes and warnings because we just feel that as an individual property owner and or you know, homeowner type contractor doesn't have the expertise to put those in or you know, the equipment to put those in. So that's something that we changed with new developments going forward. Cardinal Ridge was before that change.
Okay, thank you.
All right, additional questions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Mann.
Yes.
Trustee Gerger.
Yes.
Trustee Fountain.
Yes.
Trustee Detmers.
Yes.
Trustee Mao.
Yes.
Trustee Churchill.
Yes.
Item 4 is review of the 2018 property tax levy and approval of the estimate. We're going to have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mao, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Churchill. Sherry?
Tonight we have an estimate of the 2018 property tax levy. I'll just go through what the estimate is.
The estimate is $1,420,000. Now, as you're aware, we inflate our levy to make sure we capture all the new construction and annexations that have come into the village. So in reality, our levy will probably be a lot less. Right now we're announcing this as part of the Truth in Taxation law. So since the village is subject to tax caps, that means existing property may not see an increase of more than inflation. So we're making sure we have enough levied so we can capture the new constructions and improvements. As far as the calendar goes for the levy, at the end of the month, you'll see a notice published in the Clarion announcing a public hearing that will be held prior to the December 11th board meeting. And at the December 11th board meeting, there will be a property tax levy ordinance passed, as well as a resolution abating the tax levy attached to the electric bonds. So basically the attachments you see there are a historical analysis of our assessed equalized valuation back to 2008. And the village's property tax rate is roughly 45 cents per $100 of EAV, and it's probably stayed about around that since 2012.
Any questions for Sherry?
We also attached in the public or in the administrative content the notice of proposed property tax. So that's what actually goes in the paper.
In addition to the notice, there will also be a little blurb in the paper describing what I just described tonight, the approach we take to the property tax levy to capture all the annexations and new development in Chatham.
And the hearing, the public hearing will be before the board meeting on December the 11th.
You need us to motion to approve this? Approve the estimate? Or just move forward?
Does it just need to be announced?
Just the announcement is fine.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Any further questions for Sherry?
Can we get a copy of this?
This is what
It'll be in the
goes in
paper.
the paper. That's the word.
Yeah.
And then there's a separate one that
Content.
That's the required wording. Then there's a separate section that describes what the required wording means. So.
That's
All
under
right.
public content under this.
All right, schedule of meetings. Committee of the Whole meets immediately following this. ADA Transition Planning Committee, 6 p.m. November the 20th. Chatham Police Commission, 2 p.m. November 21st. Village Board meets again 6 p.m. November 27th. Utility Oversight Subcommittee, 6 p.m. December 10th. Public Properties Recreation Commission meeting, 6 p.m. January 14th. Additional public comments regarding village business. Ms. Billick, you signed up again, or did we get you on the sewer already?
I'd love to come back up, but you know what? I'm too busy snickering back here, so yeah, baby, it's all right.
Miss Sanders? Pass me out. Baby, it's all right. I don't remember last time somebody told me that. Miss Sanders.
Last night, a group of my fellow pickleball players and I met with the Recreation Committee, and it was recommended that we have, you guys are the ones that have the power, you guys have the ones that have the money, so recommended that maybe I come and just tell you a little bit about why we want pickleball courts in Chatham. Right now, we have to go to Springfield to play pickleball. We have beautiful tennis courts here that I spent the summer going back and forth looking at the tennis courts, seeing how much the tennis courts are used. They are not being used. I think twice I saw people on the courts. To change the tennis courts into pickleball courts is about 20% of what new courts would cost. We don't want all of the tennis courts. We know that some of the courts are used for school. We're asking for a portion of the tennis courts be turned into pickleball courts. We're looking at maybe something to start with, maybe 6 courts. And I do know that the recreation meeting is going to talk to you guys. I got the feeling that they were in favor of this, but it's of course always a monetary thing. To give you an idea, it's probably the fastest growing sport in the United States right at the moment. Chatham is one of the few communities around here that does not have any courts. Most of the players are on the 55 and over, and while you guys do a fantastic job of providing activities for our youth, us older people really don't have anything to do, and it's a fantastic thing. I was introduced to it last spring. The Springfield Pickleball Club gives free lessons, and they provide the equipment on Wednesday night, so that'll give anybody here in Chatham an opportunity to do that, and then come back and play the courts. It started out in Springfield, I think, with 8 members. They're now up to 250 members. They sponsor a tournament every summer. They had people from 16 different states. They had 350 people playing in the tournament. They had to cut them off because they didn't have enough courts to play. And who's to say that couldn't roll over here into Chatham and bring a lot of money into the city too. So please give some real hard thought to playing pickleball. I was very happy to see some of my other pickleball friends are here. So if you guys have any questions.
Do you know what the cost is to convert half?
Well, I'm glad you're sitting down. To put in new courts, brand new, are $25,000 a court. To convert the existing tennis courts is about $5,000
per court.
Mm-hmm.
We got a quote about 1.5 years ago, and to convert 3 of the tennis courts into 8 pickleball courts, it was going to be $38,000. So Dustin followed up. That number went up to 40 today. But
for 8?
For 8, but they're looking for 6. So different striping, different painting, 1 less net. that might keep that number maybe in the 35 range or something like that.
Any other questions?
Do you know how many people in Chatham that would stay and play?
They are Chatham people who belong to the Springfield Pickleball Club. Right now are between 30 and 40 members.
Okay.
One of the gentlemen that talked last night, he said a lot of people in his subdivision play, but they just don't belong to the pickleball club itself.
That's above the 40.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's on Wednesday nights, the new players, I know there was between 50 and 60 new players every week would show up.
Every week?
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. Yeah. I was invited to a night by Mr. Marconi. There's a lot of people. I was surprised.
I wouldn't mind taking you down.
Well, he never invited me back. I don't think I was.
Who won?
Have any kids' courts?
If I may, I do just want to add to what Mrs. Sanders is saying, is that there was a very strong representation last night at the Public Properties Commission. It's obvious that there are a lot of people that feel passionate about it. And one of the things that I appreciated was that they brought to the table, an idea of the village putting an estimate together of what the cost might be and giving these guys a fundraising goal or objective where they can go help raise some of the funds needed to convert the courts. I appreciated that. I think they know the financial position that we're in, being responsible, and that meant a lot to me. So that's one thing that they asked, if we could potentially consider that. And I know there's a lot asked of us of the parks. There are a lot of other groups looking for various things. And I think that, with their expressed interest, that we should satisfy that request and give them something to shoot for.
Are you going to be the point person, Jan?
I can.
Can you make sure that Pat has your contact information? And I know that Dustin he went right to work on it this morning just to follow up to get some of that information.
Dustin has a meeting set up with Friday with Josh and with the people to do the painting and the reconfiguration. So they might, with what they have envisioned, and then those people being there, we'd probably have a better quote of what it would cost.
We'll let you guys continue to work with Dustin to try to get to what that might be, and then we'll follow up.
Okay. That is through the Springfield Park District, correct? I'm sorry. Through the Springfield Park District?
The Springfield Pickleball Club is, yes.
No.
So all the courts
they
are the
have
Pickleball Association,
sorry, they have
not the park districts?
Park District owns the court. The association is separate.
That's what I was
like CDSI here.
That's what I was getting to, is the Park District has the courts.
And they have, because it's a pickleball club, they work with the Park District. I know, like this year they got lights put up, they got some new wind screens, they were able to, the pickleball club itself spent $20,000 refurbishing the courts. So, and that's done with dues, that's done, with tournaments that they have, in the city and stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities to, support the courts, to maintain the courts. We just need a little bit of help.
Okay. And I'm passing around a flyer showing some of the stuff on pickleball courts, and also the agreement that the Pickleball Association signed with the Springfield Park District for use of those facilities. So.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I would like to back up just a second. Can I get, just to get this fully documented, can I get a motion to adopt the property tax levy estimate, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Mao, second by Trustee Gerger. Madam Clerk, can you go ahead and get this on record, please?
Mm-hmm. Trustee Mann?
Yes.
Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Fountain?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao?
Yes.
Trustee Churchill?
Yes.
All right. Now, with no further business, scheduled meeting covered. Any additional public comments? Hearing none, I would have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
We were going to go into executive session. Do you want to go in for the cow or?
We'll go after the committee.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. So motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Trustee Mao has made a motion. Have a second.
Second.
Second by Trustee Churchill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting stands adjourned. Chairman Gerger, you have the floor.
Okay. We got to switch out clerks here.
Gotta go to dance for my daughter.
Can we get you on record calling in the righty?
What'd you say? When you're done, just give them the paperwork.
No, for the executive committee.
It's over there in a box.
I have your agenda up for you. Thanks, Joe. Yep,
It's a digital one now.
it's right here. And
That's a little more advanced, Joe, since the last one we had.
Type it up.
Showed up one night. Oh my gosh. It was packed. It was Springfield.
There's 25 members at the meeting.
Just put it back in there when you're done.
Never seen.
That's impressive.
I've been in those meetings. There have been 20
Thanks, Joe.
ever combined.
And they show up religiously. And they just.
It was.
Okay. Call to order. Roll call.
Trustee Mann.
Present.
Trustee Detmers.
Present.
Trustee Fountain.
Here.
Trustee Mao.
Here.
Trustee Scherzo.
Present.
Chairman Gerger.
Present. Can I get a motion to include Trustee Fountain?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second. Trustee Mao, seconded by Trustee Mann. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comments on agenda topics. Did we have anybody sign up?
Any additional?
Okay. Motion to bring the consent agenda forward.
So moved.
I'll second.
Trustee Scherschel, seconded by Trustee Mao. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. No old business, new business, CMT engineering updates? Jim?
I don't know why that's on the minutes. They approved the minutes. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of items going on.
Up a little higher, Jim.
Higher?
There you go.
Higher? Okay. Let's see, North Park Avenue. We are completing the curb and gutter work that has been done and the resulting sidewalk adjacent to the curb and gutter. The weather has not been favorable for this project. And we've had lengthy conversations with the contractor and their schedule and the ability to pave this year. One of the biggest concerns was we don't want to mill and then do partial base treatment and then get horrible weather and it stays open all winter long. In particular, the pavement mix that we're using is a polymer mix, so it's got plastics in it, and it has a more stringent heat requirement. It has to be paved at 315 degrees. Anything cooler than that, what ends up happening is it becomes hard, brittle, and is impossible to roll. So contractor was really looking for a 5-day window from the time that they start milling to the time that they pave. And last week was when they were ready to start milling and paving, and looking forward, and rightfully so, decided not to mill because of the temperature and weather. So anything beyond the Thanksgiving period, most of the asphalt plants shut down for the year. Most of the contractors lay off their workforce and back in the spring. So coordinate that through the village and Pat, and we've kind of come to the agreement or the realization that weather just did not work out this year late in the season to be able to pave that. And instead of having this roadway torn up all winter long, we're going to finish the sidewalk work, get everything restored in the parkway. Curb and gutter work is done, and then first thing in the spring we'll come back and mill and pave the asphalt, so we can ensure a good product that meets specifications and requirements.
So to be clear, all the sidewalk sections are going to be put back in.
That is
They're
correct.
not going to,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all the sidewalk will be completed, all the areas adjacent to the sidewalk, backfilled, smoothed out. Obviously, seeding would not take place this year. We can put down temporary seed, but not really expecting much to grow from this point.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but the
crazy hybrids.
Yes, our focus was to make sure that we didn't tear this up and then leave it torn up all over winter, and try to rush it here at the end of the year and obtain a inferior product. So, made a choice to move forward. We'll do it next spring. Be first on the books. Come good weather in the spring. Let's see. Another project that we completed, patching on Ptarmigan. We talked about that earlier. Did do a patching contract with Kinney. The area was Ptarmigan, south of Plummer. And what that was a 165 square yards of full depth pavement removal replacement, 8-inch concrete on 4-inch rock on compacted subgrade to remove all the settled and deteriorated pieces, portions of the roadway in that area. And they completed that, it was a week and a half ago. So that is completed. The other project going on is tank painting, which everyone's seeing. Temperature on that has caused us a little bit of a delay, but paint requirements on that require 35 degrees and higher. So we have a much better working range on that as opposed to 50 and higher with the asphalt on Park. So contractor is telling us all he needs is about a week worth of decent temperature, and the forecasts look favorable on that. Right now they are working on installing final metalworks, fabrication, hatches, handrails, ladders, and so forth, welding on the tank. The tank has been stripped, primed, and an intermediate coat placed, and that's what you see right now. And it requires one more coat for final completion. So with weather looking good here in the extended forecast, we are optimistic that it will be completed this year, which will allow us to fill the tank, get off the hydropneumatic tanks, and restore the system back to normal operating conditions.
That final coat will be darker so that it'll match what we have out at the ground storage. The reason they do light to dark is then they can see if they missed any spots when they go over to put the final coat on.
Correct. So what you see out there is kind of a lighter green. The colors will be exactly the same as what's at the ground storage tank over by the marina. So as Pat mentioned, they do a slightly different color, so there's a visual representation in terms of coverage. We also take paint thickness tests throughout the process to ensure that the proper paint thicknesses are met for the final coat. Let's see, letter of credit for Cardinal Ridge, we talked about that. Glendale Plat 4, that'll be completed here this fall. The developer's engineers working with the electric department to have electric coordinated and put in for that development. So what we see is a completion and finalization of that plat, here at the end of the year. And then
a little update on that. I mean, we had absolutely no problems with the engineers, the contractor. Everything went about as smoothly as can be on a project. So kudos to the Raves for doing such a good job on that subdivision.
Yeah, top quality contractors, top quality coordination, getting the defective pavement that was kind of plagued us for a while there repaired and replaced. So
that portion all done? The defective stuff's all done? Yes. They got it wide open again?
Yes. Right. So, we are, extremely pleased with their progress on that. So, one other item that we're working with on the village is the IEPA MS4 permitting. And, one of the things that has kind of come down the pipeline here in recent days is the Lake Springfield watershed has worked with the IEPA and implemented a waste load requirement for phosphorus entering into the lake. So runoff from the surrounding watersheds, traveling through the waterways and getting to Lake Springfield increases the phosphorus load on the lake, and it's just environmentally not a good condition. It affects the drinking water and treatment of the drinking water for Lake Springfield. So they have worked with the EPA and coming up with a waste load reduction concept and have put that into a mandate that we think is going to come down as part of our requirements for our MS4 permit, annual permit with the IEPA. One of the things that they're saying is we can discharge 0.31 pounds of phosphorus from the entire village of Chatham, which is kind of a ridiculous number. You'd almost need a teaspoon to measure that. So we're trying to get some clarification on what that means, what the testing requirements are, what what is the village's obligations as far as that, because there's a large agricultural community upstream of us, and then there's golf course communities and so forth downstream of us prior to entering the lake. But there's about 5 locations where streams, waterways leave the village and enter the Lake Springfield watershed. And the requirements have been set in terms of this waste load mandate, but the testing hasn't been established, or the procedures, or the reporting. So they say 0.31 pounds per day. Is that on an average annual basis? Is it maximum on a single day? EPA has not elaborated on the requirements on that, because most of the community that is discharging into the Lake Springfield watershed is agricultural, and that process is voluntary for the agricultural communities. They don't have a hammer to be able to enforce that on an agricultural property or community, whereas they do have a hammer on the village of Chatham, because we have an annual permit that we have to maintain and adhere to on a regular basis. So what we're expecting is the next round of MS4 permits will have that more than likely as a requirement. Actually, we have a meeting with village staff tomorrow to kind of talk through our strategy to implement this, with the initial part being more education and public awareness, and then also activities associated with in-house village procedures. For example, when we place fertilizer on the parks, let's use non-phosphorus-based fertilizers. Make sure that that's a mandate. Also, public awareness, probably some website activities associated with that. Another big component of that was the village's foresight to implement a single lot erosion control measures for buildings, because of the fact that phosphorus doesn't get into the water by itself. It's carried by sediment and debris in the waterways that get into our storm sewer systems and get carried downstream. So a lot of it is going to be ordinance-based in terms of what the village of Chatham is seeing, adherence and compliance with these ordinances, and then public outreach. We will probably kind of take a step back and wait for mandates to come from the EPA in terms of quantitative data or testing procedures. But we want to be proactive to say that we're doing our part, but we don't exactly know what our part is yet until a mandate comes from the EPA. So
one of the things that we did do, me and Jim drove around last week, and we visited all the construction sites in the new subdivisions, and I don't think there was one that had all of their wattles and their silt fencing and anything completely done and done right. So I told Ryan that he needed to start coming down on these builders, that we're going to pay for it in the long run if they don't follow the rules that we put in place for them. So you guys may get a few phone calls from upset builders and stuff that, well, you're enforcing something that they're not enforcing in Springfield. Well, I can't worry about what they're enforcing in Springfield. They have the same rules that we have. If they don't enforce it, that's up to Springfield to decide that. But we're going to enforce these rules, and if these guys don't do it, Ryan is going to withhold inspections until they come and start following the rules. We can't have them letting silt run out all over the streets, go into the sewers, and then the sewers run into Lake Springfield anymore.
So what's the expected teeth that the EPA has on us besides not giving us our permit, or is that the only thing they can withhold from us?
Well, the permit would, violation of the permit would come fines and penalties tagged to that. So, right now the village is in compliance with their MS4 permit in terms of education, documentation, programs associated with keeping storm sewers clean, using the Vector truck to maintain storm sewers, keeping debris out of the systems, ordinances related to erosion control, making sure that large-scale developments get their required EPA and PDS permits. All of those are components to keeping the waterways and streams clean, and keeping the debris and waste load in those waterways, to a minimum at all possible. So now, while the village can't be responsible for every resident in town, there are some components there that we can do in terms of, educational outreach, services associated with, picking up leaf bags, and so leaves and debris don't get into the storm sewers. All those help, and all those look favorable to the EPA in terms of meeting the requirements of the MS4 intent. So the hammer that EPA will have, though, is they can put this waste load, non-point source waste load mandate on the MS4 permit. Technically speaking, EPA could go out and look at Polecat Creek, where it leaves the village corporate line, dip the stream, take a sample, look at how many parts per million phosphorus is in there, convert it to a daily waste load, and say you exceed your requirement, here's your fine, and you're in non-compliance. And what is your requirements, or what is your testing protocol, or what is your mitigation action associated with that? Right now, because the large area that feeds into Lake Springfield is primarily agricultural, it's going to be difficult to be able to separate, well, what's Chatham, what's agricultural. Yeah. We don't know if the burden of proof is on the village of Chatham to determine that. Worst case, I guess, is we have to put a sampling station upstream of Chatham, and we put a sampling station downstream of Chatham. Depending on when you take your sample, what time of year, and so forth, you may actually see an improvement of waterways as it goes through town, from the agricultural properties upstream to downstream.
Do we get paid then?
That's what I was saying. Do we get a credit? Is that a negative? Is it like an odometer that rolls backwards? We don't know. When the original public hearings, went forward on this, we drafted a letter on behalf of the village of Chatham, actually had Sorling review that letter, and then submitted it via certified mail to get clarification. Village of Chatham never got clarification. The document was subsequently approved with this mandate and then put on EPA's website. We happened to stumble across it just by looking up another project, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what is this? It was actually approved last year. Unbeknownst to the village of Chatham, we contacted the Sanitary Metro District, Greg Humphreys, and asked him, hey, have you received a letter on this? He says no. So it's in place, it's not being enforced. But we also don't want to wait until someone comes down on us and say, why aren't you doing this, and what have you done? We think that there's some low-cost, easy ways to get in front of it that the village can do, primarily public education, some website monitoring, enforcement of rules and regulations. But until the EPA comes back and says, you must test this in this frequency, in this manner, at these times, it's going to be difficult for us to guess what those requirements are going to be. So I think we follow best management practices, do what we can as a community, get the information out there in terms of, what are the requirements or mandates. Like Pat said, if builders are dumping sediment into the street, the village becomes liable. So we don't want that. We don't want it for the builders. We want to keep this as reasonable as possible. So a lot of best management practices, keep the sites clean, do what we can, get the word out there, education, leaf bag, grass clippings, that kind of stuff. Don't dump them in the storm sewers. Monitor it. Another thing that the EPA wants is go out maybe on a quarterly basis and look at the streams. Is there an oil slick on it? Is there, gray plumes in there? Is there anything that's changed from the last time that we monitored it that indicates a problem upstream? But just keeping an eye on it, documenting it, and moving forward. So looking at right now just low-cost options to do that and meet the requirements that we need to do to be a good partner with the city of Springfield and Lake Springfield. So. Okay.
Jim?
Yes.
I know we talked probably a month or so ago about this one product, potentially to use for the route somewhere between oil and chipping and hot mix asphalt.
Yes.
With the pavement survey that was done, I assume you can have that where you can say, yes, we have, so many miles that were rated 1, so many miles that were rated 2, 3, 4 on up, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And then I assume based on what we're seeing, this past year and maybe the previous year, we know what we're paying approximately per square yard for oil and chip, for HMA, assuming it's a mill fill, per square yard. And then this one new product I had mentioned, sounds like it runs about $3 a square yard. Is this something where you can take a look between now and maybe the January committee of the whole meeting and kind of say, okay, here's what we've got. If it was rated as a 5 or 6, here's the treatment that we would be looking at. If it was rated this, here's the treatment we would be looking at, so that we can start taking a look and see how we can maximize our limited funds to try to keep our roads in good condition and then slowly improve the ones that truly need to be improved.
Yes, absolutely. When we develop the pavement rating system, what we have in there is a category for treatment and rehab, and some of those, like you said, higher level pavements that are maybe a 6 or a 7 that don't require a mill and overlay. We included an estimate for cost for a slurry coat, so a product, a generic product very similar to what you're talking about, not an overlay, but not a seal coat, something a little bit thicker with an aggregate in it and, some, friction course in there. But, yes, we can very easily pull that from the GIS database and identify maybe what some of the worst roads are that fit into that category, and we can start looking at a plan to prioritize those and maybe look at that as a treatment option next year to maybe implement that either on a grander scale or on a trial run, whatever you guys think. But that's something I know Pat and I have talked about, looking at the oil and chip that we did on Gordon Drive to the south, and how well that's held up, and how it looks, for relatively low cost. The slurry coat and the product that you're talking about would have similar results, but wouldn't have the bleeding or tracking that you were going to get with an oil and chip.
Yeah.
So yes, we can do that.
The other question I've got with the water tower, once we were able to get the tower drain, so forth, was there anything that was major that was discovered, once we were able to get inside the tank, so forth, or pretty much what we were expecting?
The only items that we saw that are that need to be addressed is there are the brackets that hold the overflow pipe. There's 2 brackets that are completely cracked off and one that's partially cracked, and then the welding from the original construction decades ago was only done on the top of the bracket. That there's no welds on the bottom of the bracket, and we're working with the contractor to get that work done. There's also a 2-foot section of weld missing on the riser pipe going up to the bottom of the bowl that is obviously welded on the inside, that because it hasn't leaked up until this point, but there's missing weld on the outside, and that's another one that we're going to have the contractor take care of, because the last thing that we want to do is have this thing painted, finished, get it about 3/4 of the way full, and it starts leaking through a pinhole at the bottom of the tank. So those are probably the 2 biggest defects on the tank that we saw that that came out of the construction activities. Everything else is moving along as planned, and the exception of the weather.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up, we got Bill.
SSWC water update.
Yeah, Dewey had asked for kind of an update of where we're at on the water since he's new on the board. Yep. So I asked Bill first I asked Lee to put together a letter or see if he could make it. He couldn't make it tonight, so here's kind of a letter of what he sees is going on, and then Bill's going to give his opinion of what's been going on here with the painting and the pressures and pretty much everything else. So.
Okay, I'll start with a little more on the towers. Jim stole most of my thunder, but my only traffic note then is that Springfield is getting crazy already. It took me 30 minutes to go 5 miles through Springfield to get to Chatham tonight. So do your shopping in Chatham. There you go.
I can't be going to the mall. There's nothing there anymore.
That's right. There's nothing at the mall. The tower painting is a little bit slower due to the weather, as Jim said. And I think hopefully we got it's reported that we're going to get some good weather week after next. And so they should be able to finish it up. Disinfection and final testing, bacteriological testing, usually takes a few days, and that should go well as well. So I don't see any problems there. We have raised the pressure slightly in Chatham during this tank painting as a safeguard, since we don't have the backup of the tower. And so I don't think you'll notice, if maybe you did notice that, but you should notice that it's just a few pounds per square inch of differential to safeguard the system, and that will be a bit of a change. A couple notes from South Sangamon. I think the plant is running better these days. We had Ameren electrical supply issues out at the plant that were unknown. The plant just would lose power, and finally we called Ameren and kept calling, and they finally came out, discovered a ground fault in the electric supply to the South Sangamon water plant, repaired that, and then they made some other improvements out there as well. So hopefully that will improve the reliability. Plus the South Sangamon control system had some weak power supplies, very about the size of my fist, and one of them failed one night, and the backup failed at about the same time, and we had some issues like that. So we brought in some new electricians out there, and they looked at the system and put some new power supplies in. So we think we fixed some major reliability problems at the plant. I think the water quality has been good and consistent. I've spent more time out there lately now that the old engineers are gone from the South Sangamon plant, and talked to the operators, and I think they're doing a good job. And I think the water quality is more consistent. We've raised the phosphate slightly, which is something we've done as precaution. As was mentioned, when you make any change in treatment now after the Flint, Michigan lead problem of a couple of years ago, EPA requires you to increase your sampling for lead and copper. So that's something that's going to happen here in the next few months after the chloramine conversion happens, and that may happen in the next, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks probably.
The chloramine conversion will?
I'm sorry, what?
The chloramine conversion will happen in the next 3 or 4 weeks?
I think so, yeah. We've been saying that so long. I hate to promise that, but
I feel like it's the carrot at the end of the stick.
Well, there's actually a pump in place and a chemical container in place, and as soon as we get the chemical in and get some analyzers in that analyze for the different type of chlorine, I think it'll be ready to go. They're getting bids in for a pigging station, and what a pig is a cleaning plug that goes through the water mains from the wells out by the Sangamon River to the water plant out there. Iron incrustation from the wells to the plant has been a bit of a problem, and these pigging stations will allow this plug to go through the mains and clean these mains out so that they can make sure they get water from the wells in better flow. The wells themselves, we've had a couple of wells that went out recently. There's a well company that's servicing the wells, and they will be coming back up to make sure they keep those wells in service. There are 10 wells, and at any given time, this time of year, you probably only need half of the wells to operate properly. In the summertime, you need almost all of them. But so the wells should be back in service soon. There's also some training by the membrane company that's been scheduled for the operators. We got 2 new operators out there now, and although one of them is experienced, having been in New Berlin for some time, the training will help those guys understand what the manufacturer thinks they ought to be doing in terms of testing the membranes and making sure that they work properly. And lastly, the control system we call the SCADA system. The company that's been running Chatham system and New Berlin system is now taking over and running the system at South Sangamon. And so this kind of continuity from one company doing all these 3 systems should help improve communications, improve the water reliability, and make sure that we don't have any outages. So,
what company is that? The Johnson Controls?
No, it's Advanced Automation.
Advanced Automation.
By Chicago.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
I do. Is there any more talk on the green sand filtration at all, of adding that?
There is not. It's an expensive project, and what Steve Mao is talking about is installing green sand filters at the plant, which will take the load off the membranes. It's $1 million plus project. It's all been designed, as I understand, by South Sangamon's engineers, and I think it's just the cost of the project that's keeping that from moving forward. Plus, kind of the grand scheme. What do we want to do out there? Is that the solution, or is there something else we can do? So we're not,
when we were looking at the now, better, best, I think the green sand filter is the best.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that plant is running fiscally responsible and without having to come back and ask for any kind of rate increases before they take any of those next steps. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Next, Village of Chatham audit presentation.
Thanks.
Buckle up, Christine. It's really entertaining. You were waiting all night for this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to stretch before he gets going.
Yeah. I'll be brief. Thanks for the opportunity to work with the village again. I appreciate all the help that Sherry provided during the audit process and the rest of the staff. My name's Chad Lucas. I'm a partner with Sikich. With me is Brent Lake. He was our audit manager, so he was responsible for the day-to-day, overseeing the day-to-day field work. So you have a couple of documents. You have the comprehensive annual financial report and the auditor's communication to the board in management. And I'll just very briefly go through and highlight a few things in the annual financial report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. So if you remember, last year was the first year that you submitted your report to the Certificate of Achievement program for the Government Finance Officers Association. This is the second year for that. You did receive the award last year, and a copy of that certificate is included in this document. What that means, the comprehensive annual financial report means, is that your report includes both introductory and statistical sections. The introductory section includes a transmittal letter about background information about the village, about the local economy. The statistical section in the back of the document includes trend information, 10 years worth of trend information for revenue, capacity, financial trends, debt information, demographic information, and other statistics. So it's a lot of good information, historical information, and trends that you can see in the back of this document. Essentially, what those two sections of the document mean is that your financial report is over and above the basic requirements of financial statements. The meat, I guess, or the basic financial statements of that document is in the financial section, and included in that section is our independent auditor's report. It is what we call an unmodified opinion, which means that based on our audit procedures and our testing, that we believe everything included in the financial statements is fairly presented. Right after the independent auditor's report is the management's discussion and analysis. It's page number MDA 1 through 12, I think. This is where there's some discussion about reasons, financial highlights, reasons for why things increased or decreased. A lot of good information. This is written by management, by Sherry, and it's kind of where you get a lot of good information, so you don't have to read the other 150 pages. I'll just briefly touch on a couple of financial highlights. The government-wide financial statements starts on page 4, and that includes the statement of net position and the statement of activities. The statement of net position includes both kind of a summarized information of all your governmental activities and all your business type activities in 2 separate columns. The governmental activities includes the general fund, all your special revenue funds, capital project fund, debt service fund. The business type activities include your electric and water and sewer funds. And so included in here in these government-wide financial statements is a full accrual-based financial statement. So it includes all of your capital assets, net of any related debt that you have associated with those assets. It also includes a liability for your pension liabilities for both IMRF and for your police pension fund, as well as all the other debt that you have. And so included in here is the statement of activities for this, and one of the items that I always point out is the change in net position. This is essentially your net income or net loss for the year. Your change in net position improved for both the governmental and the business type activities for the year. If you look on page 6, the third line from the bottom there shows your positive change in net position for your governmental activities of 1.3 million, and for your combined business type activities of 1.7. So you had a very healthy change in net position this past fiscal year. Right after that is the fund financial statements, and this includes all the individual funds. The major fund is considered the general fund, and then there's an aggregate non-major for all your other funds. Page 7 at the bottom, you can see there that your total fund balances for all your governmental funds is approximately 3.4 million. The general fund makes up 2.3 million of that, and the unrestricted or unassigned portion of that is about 1.7, almost 1.8 million dollars. If you skip over to page 9, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for those governmental funds. Again, just the general fund is the only what's considered major. The change in that position, third line from the bottom there was a slight decrease of $16,000 during the year. And then the aggregate non-major, these are all the other governmental funds that aren't considered major, had a decline of $129,000. Then if you turn over to starting on page 11 is the statement of net position for the enterprise funds, the proprietary funds, which are electric and water and sewer. Pages 11 and 12 are the balance sheets, statement of net position, the assets, liabilities, and then the net position. You can see there at the bottom of page 12, the net position is approximately $20 million in total, and about 18.5 of that is invested in capital assets, net of any related debt. So the vast majority of your net position is obviously tied up in your infrastructure-related assets, your capital assets. On page 13 is the income statement, changes in net position for the enterprise funds. So third line from the bottom there, you can see that the electric fund had a positive increase of $454,000, and the water and sewer funds had a positive increase of approximately $1.2 million. About $790,000 of that is contributions from developers. You can see the line right above that. So about $450,000 for each of the funds this past year. Then if you skip over to page 15 and 16, This is the financial information for the Police Pension Trust Fund. The Police Pension Trust Fund is considered a component unit of the village, so the information is included in the village's financial statements. And you can see there that the assets of the pension fund are approximately $7.3 million. A small liability is included there as well. And then if you turn over to page 16, these are all the additions. This is the contributions made by the village, and then also the contributions made by the employees is the first set of numbers there at the top for almost $650,000. It was a good year for the net investment income of $363,000, so there were additions of a little over $1 million. The benefit payments and refunds and administrative costs were about $350,000, so you had a positive net increase of $663,000 this past year. After that are those notes to the financial statements. These include significant accounting policies, more detail about the information that we just went through, debt, cash and investments, the retirement, IMRF and police pension retirement fund information is included in here, and information about the joint ventures that you have, the South Sangamon Water Commission. So there's a lot of good detailed information included in the notes to the financial statements. And then after that is the required supplementary information, starting on page 60. And this is got some trend information. These schedules are going to be built out as we accumulate the information going forward. Eventually, there'll be 10 years worth of trend information. These are the required supplementary information for the IMRF information and the Police Pension Trust Fund. So the page 60 there just shows the last 3 years of information for IMRF. The last double underlined amount right above the percentages there you can see is the net employer pension liability. And so over the past 3 years, it's gone from about 3.2 million to about 1.1 million. So IMRF, as of 12/31/17, you were approximately 90% funded. On page 61 is the Police Pension Trust Fund information, and same thing here. This has got 4 years worth of information, so you can see there that the pension liability has increased from about 3.6 million in 2015 to about 5.4 million. It held somewhat consistent from the prior year. And there's also some schedules about the required contributions, actuarially determined contributions, and the amounts that were contributed for each of those funds on the next two schedules. And then the last two schedules in this section are the other post-employment benefits. And this is the benefits for retirees other than pension. And so it shows a list, a 6-year trend information there of the employer contributions on page 64, and then the actuarially determined liability on page 65. This liability is currently not reported in your financial statements for this year, but next year the liability will be reported in the financial statements. There's a new GASB pronouncement that's required for the next fiscal year, so that'll be a change next year. The rest of the information is just some supplementary schedules, budget versus actual information, combining schedules for the non-major funds. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about any of that. So that the other document, the second document that we have, is the auditor's required communication to the board. And the first page is a cover page. The second, page 2, is the required letter, just basically discussing all the estimates that we evaluated during the audit process. On page 3, there were no difficulties encountered during the audit. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We actually did not have any corrections, no adjustments this year. So all the records were in very good shape whenever we performed our audit process. No disagreements with management. To our knowledge, there were no other consultations with other independent accountants. Pages 5 and 6 are the schedules of past adjustments, 5, 6, and 7. We didn't have any past adjustments that we didn't make this year, and these schedules would normally include things that are considered immaterial to the financial statements, to the opinion. The amounts that are included in there were the prior year amounts, the effect on the current year, so they were very small. And starting on page 8 then is the management letter, and we did not have any management letter comments this year. The comments that we had last year were all corrected, so there were no comments, no findings, no comments. And we always do include, starting on page 9, the future accounting pronouncements, which I mentioned before. GASB 75 will be effective next year, and that'll be the big change to your financial presentation.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. I always want to thank you for, I know the amount of effort and time that you put into not only preparing all this, but making sure the auditors do their job all the way through. And even one of the guys, Brett, how's the baby's good? So thank you very much, Sherry, for all the effort that you put into this, and we're looking forward to receiving your award again this year for another report. So,
agree. Thank you. Next, village manager update, or the police pension fund actuary presentation.
There's a PowerPoint presentation connected to this. Yeah, that.
Probably the.
Thank you.
It's on the board doc.
Yeah, I think you just launched it.
Okay.
Thank you. Might take a while to come on.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes. No, that's
Is that it? Oh, you're on the wrong.
It's
close that one up there. Go down to
the next one.
Chatham audit presentation. Oh. Or no, wait a minute, that's not
actuary.
it.
It's that one right there.
Go to the details.
Oh,
there it is.
The very last attachment.
This one? Right here that I'm pointing to?
Trying to open up things like that inside Word docs takes a few minutes. Once it's open, it just hit open down. It is on.
There you go.
Pension fund.
And then get that enable editing.
Ouch.
All right, I'm Bob Reeds with Lauterbach and Amon. Perform the actuarial work for the police pension fund this year. We have a brief summary here of the actuarial report. The whole report's 40-some odd pages long, so we're just going to head over the highlights of the contribution and what changed throughout the year. So we can start off on page 1 of our handout here. We're looking at the current year contribution requirement of $634,000, up from $604,000 last year. So it's about a 5% increase. Typically, we would expect to go up 3.25% a year each. That's along with your salary growth assumption. So that would be kind of an expected value. So we're a little bit higher than that. So there's a few demographic items and financial items that we'll talk about that make up that extra 1.75% increase. The $634,000 consists of really two different items. One being the normal cost. The normal cost is payment of benefits that the active officers are currently accruing. So each year that they earn an additional year of service, there's a cost associated. That's called the normal cost. So the amount is about $250,000. That's the employer obligation. That's outside of what the officers are currently having deducted from their payroll. So that's about $250,000. And then the remaining $384,000 is payment of your unfunded accrued actuarial liability. So if you look down about middle of the page, there's a $5.2 million number there of the unfunded actuarial liability. That's the amortization piece of that amount. So right now, your funding policy is to contribute try to fund that up to 100% over the next 18 years as a level percent of pay. So, each year that's that $384,000, since it's a level percent of pay, would again expect to increase with your salary growth rate of 3.25% each year until that 18 years is elapsed. If everything works out perfectly, you're 100% funded. You don't have an unfunded liability anymore, then your only contribution going forward would be that normal cost piece, just that accrual of benefits for the active officers. Your funded percentage right now is at 59.26%. Right now, the median for Illinois State Police and Fire Funds is about 56%, so you're above the median. And the good thing is you're trending up. You've increased, about 165 basis points over the prior year, and we'll go through that in a few moments as well. Your active member count, 15 actives. You're actually down one member from last year. I don't know what activities happened since 4:30 if you've hired anybody on, but as of 4:30, you're actually down one member from the prior year. So that actually had a demographic gain that helped reduce your cost for this upcoming year. And your inactive member count remained the same. You have one terminated vested employee and 5 current retirees in pay status. I'm going to jump around a little bit and go to page 4 next. When I was talking about the contribution, what we expect to happen, that $20,000 increase in the contribution is what we would expect. That's at 3.25% I mentioned. And then there's some demographic items and some financial items that kind of make up the rest of the, basically another $10,000 increase in the contribution requirement. The first item being the salary increase is greater than or less than expected. About half of your officers received a pay less than 3.75% this prior year. We have an assumption of 4%. So to the extent that they're coming in at less than that assumption, their benefit's going to be a little bit lower going forward. So that creates an actuarial gain, which reduces your contribution requirement by about $4,000. Demographic assumptions, as I mentioned, you had one terminated vested employee throughout the year. So really when you have a terminated non-vested employee, leaves the fund, basically all the liability he had goes to zero, and you're also not paying a normal cost for that employee going forward. So your contribution is going to go down because you're not paying for any additional benefits, and also your contribution goes away because he doesn't have a liability anymore. He doesn't have any piece of amortization going forward. So his liability actually brought the fund down about $100,000 in actuarial liability. Now that's offset a little bit by basically you didn't have any other demographic activity. We'd normally expect maybe some retirements or some other terminations or withdrawals or disabilities. We have all that kind of built in as we calculate the liability. So to the extent that none of that happened, the plan experiences a small loss in that case. So that means your liability would go up. But net, that non-vested termination washed out any of those losses you had from any non-activity. We didn't have any assumption changes during the year. Currently, your discount rate's the same, mortality table is the same. Those are the main assumptions we usually talk about. No changes to those this year. Asset returns less than expected. Right now, we're assuming 6.25% return each year. And on an actuarial value of assets basis, you return 4.2%. So there's a little bit shortfall there. Now, remember when we're talking about actuarial value of assets versus market value of assets, there's a difference in that actuarial value of assets, we defer gains and losses over a 5-year period. We don't immediately recognize them as you would on your financial statements. So to the extent that you didn't hit your expected 6.25%, there was a loss that incurred. We don't have to take all that in immediately. We defer part of that down the road. So by doing so, that kind of increases your future contribution as those deferred losses start flowing into the fund. And that's where about a $10,000 increase in your contribution for the current year is due to that asset return mix. And also, finally, the contributions greater than or less than expected. We expected $604,000 from last year's report. You put in $530,000. Now it's kind of a difference because there's really that 2-year lag when the money is actually levied and requested till it actually hits the fund. So 2 years ago you requested $531,000, so you're right in line with what you've levied. It's just really a timing difference of when the money actually hits the fund, and that's where you have a small little change here on the contributions going forward. To go back 2 pages to page 2. So the change in net position, this is basically your market value of assets. What happened to your assets during the year? You began the year at $6.65 million. You had $530,000 of employer contributions come in, $118,000 of employee money, and $363,000 of investment returns. So net, just over $1 million came into the fund. You paid out just around $350,000 benefit payments and expenses. So net, the fund grew by $663,000 throughout the year. What's important to note is that benefit payments number there, and really where is that in relation to your market value. So if we took the $332,000 divided by your $7.3 million, you're paying out about 4.5% to 5% of your assets every year in benefit payments. But what's nice to do is look at the line above your benefit payments and your investment return. That's greater than your benefit payment. So basically you can look at it as saying our investments are paying off all of our benefits at the current time, which means all the municipal dollars that are going in and all the officer dollars that are going in are going to pay down your unfunded liability and to protect the future dollars for those officers that are contributing their own money. You're not having a situation where that ratio starts to get up 8, 9, 10%, where money comes in is going straight out the door to pay benefits, and you're not chipping away at that unfunded liability. So you're in a good position right now, keeping that having that benefit payment percentage lower than your expected return on assets. Page 3. What's going to happen to your benefit payments over the next 5-10 years? Right now you're at $318,000. We project in about 5 years you're going to be paying about $534,000 a year. So that includes, one, you have your 5 current retirees. They're going to be receiving COLA increases, so that their benefits are going to go up each year. And also we're projecting, factoring the age and the service of your active officers, and at which point they may start to elect to retire and start drawing upon their pensions as well. So, that's, $500,000 in 5 years, $845,000 in 10 years. So it's a number to keep an eye on as those benefits are continuing to come out. You're going to be paying out the benefits. You want to make sure that the funding policy is intact. You're making your contributions to the fund, and then the funded percentage is increasing, so you make sure that you have the money in hand to pay those benefits in the future. Go to page 5. Page 5 is just a demographic description that I already mentioned with one officer who terminated non-invested throughout the year, and really what his impact had to the fund. Decreased the recommended contribution by about $9,000. Page 6 is just a funded percentage summary. This is basically the same exhibit, just displayed in a different way, about the net changes in the contribution. What was the expected value? What impact did the salary increases have? What impact did the demographic changes have, asset returns have on that funded percentage? We would expect you to grow at 2.95%. Net, you came in at about 1.65, just mainly because those asset returns is the big differentiator, not quite hitting your assumption there. Kept your funded percentage down a little bit less than what we would like to have, but still in a good position. And lastly, page 7. This is the number that you would have just heard from your auditors with regards to what's your financial statement liability. The $5.4 million is your financial net pension liability, and then your total pension expense, basically the cost of the accounting cost of the plan for the year is about $769,000. It's somewhat comparable to what the levy request would be on an accounting basis. So it's basically the cost of the accounting cost of the plan versus the funding cost of the plan. Anybody have any questions?
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glazed over completely.
Next, village manager update.
A couple of the items that I wanted to talk about today. We'll see. One of them was we need to come up with a little guidance from the board on where they want to go on a couple major items. we've kicked around whether to put out for bids for garbage hauling. We've had problems recently with the leaf bag program and the branch program. Do we want to incorporate all that stuff into the private industry? Give the $2 per month back and then let everybody deal with their waste haulers for all of the leaf bag program, and also try to get with someone that would offer branch pickup services for them. Somebody has a tree, branches that fall in their yard. You call a contractor, he comes and picks them up or cuts them down for you and hauls them off. We need to kind of to talk about going down that road.
So with the waste haulers, from my understanding, there's a couple of different solutions too, like franchising.
On board docs, I put a couple things on there that Jeff had sent us. They're in the executive section because they're in draft form. But if you guys would take a look at that stuff and kind of get a feel for what he's put out there in ways that we could do this. But really, what we need to be able to do as we get close to setting a budget for next year is you guys kind of give us a philosophy of where you'd like to go with that. And if you know that, okay, we want to keep doing all of this stuff internally, then we'll put together a budget and a way to tackle that and approach that going forward. If you want to look at the possibility of eliminating all those services as a governmental body and pushing that off to the residents to be able to handle it themselves, that way they can deal with it however way they want.
Are you wanting us to think about it, or are you wanting some comments tonight?
I think you can discuss it and talk about it tonight. I mean, unless you want to get out of here. But there's two items, and then there's one other one.
The franchising stuff that I've seen and looked at, because I've looked at it just because infrastructure for all of the waste haulers that we have puts a lot of stress on our roads. Our roads are old. So if you look at franchising agreements, you look at different towns, they include like a tree or limb. They can include also a pickup days for bigger items, and they can greatly reduce or equal the cost.
I think I share a similar concern when I talk to other constituents. I saw one study where garbage trucks put a 9,300 times more impact on a road than, say, an SUV. And when you have them going down every day of the week or 5 days a week.
Four different haulers,
throughout the week. I mean, that's a lot of stress on the roads. And then that's ultimately a cost on us taxpayers to repair the roads that much quicker.
And then the disparity in pricing. I've noticed in just doing quick little surveys, with the same hauler, you can get dramatically different prices. And you have to call and get it changed and whatnot. Now, they all offer different services, so I think if you do look at the franchise thing, you've got to agree on what services to provide.
Well, I really don't believe it's Chatham's responsibility to say who you can and cannot have for a garbage hauler, and also the services that you can and can or cannot get. I mean, this village has told people what they can and cannot do on certain other things, and we see how that's worked in the past. And I don't think it's our responsibility to get in the middle of the market, and that's what those garbage haulers and waste haulers. That's private business. I don't believe that's our responsibility to get involved in that.
See, that's I guess the third option, where one option is we cease to do branches and leaf bags, and it's up to every resident to work out with whoever they want to take care of those things. Or you offer the waste management where we look at a franchise type price, where we turn around and put it out for bids, whether we split the village up into two halves, the whole thing, third. Or do you guys want to try to approach or tackle this?
I would do it all in one, just because I think that'd get messy if you split it up. I would be interested in getting some bids and allowing constituents to give us feedback on what they think. You know, because they're with having a village going wide, it allows them to weigh in and say, you know what? Because you go up and down the street, you've got trash cans every day of the week, and you've got and I'm listening to garbage trucks every morning of the week. And I think there's sometimes where a governmental entity can play a role to help out the constituents in the marketplace. And I think there's customers that are in the middle of their rates jumping because the companies don't know how many customers they have from month to month.
And they're not regulated here.
And they're not, right. But if we regulate them, we can then ensure that they have a set rate. It's not jumping every 3 months. They don't know what to expect on the rate's going to be, and they don't have to listen to the noise. And the roads are going to last longer. So,
yeah,
I mean,
but the side effect of that is we have to manage that then. Then the village has to manage that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you write that into the contract, that waste hauler will manage all of the complaints and everything else, and they do all the billing. We don't want, that's another part of it again, you know, like how Matt had talked about. You could go and put that under a management control, or you could ask that it's not under management control. You could turn around and deal with all the complaints, or all the complaints go directly to the waste haulers. That's why there's so many different assets or facets of this.
So what's the fallback then, Pat? If the complaints go to the waste haulers and the complaint hauler or the waste haulers are like this, so where are the complaints then? Because in the contract you put, if the waste haulers don't listen to you, go to the village board. I mean, that's what they do now.
I think that's what the city of Springfield does. Right now.
I mean, just because Springfield does it doesn't mean we have to.
I'm not saying that we have to do any of this, Matt. It's a discussion night. No, I'm sorry. This is the board.
we could have a performance evaluation of some sort where, yeah, they would first go to the village or the waste hauler and with their complaint. It should be between those two to resolve that complaint.
As
If
with
it is
any
not,
contract.
say what?
As with any contract, you're going to have performance guarantees, and they're going to have to report back on complaints and resolutions of complaints.
Yep.
But then we still have to manage the performance of that contract.
Exactly.
Right now, they don't have any recourse.
It's well, yeah,
They shouldn't. It's the private market.
Yeah, we're
The recourse that the resident has now, if you have company A and you're not happy with the service, you can always hire company B and C.
Right.
Correct.
Which, if we go to a bid process, you're stuck with company A
Exactly.
for the next 2 years or 3 years.
And then the other aspect is you can, I don't know how City of Springfield works, but I know there's some communities that say the price. You know, they set the price for, and then you're going to limit competition too.
Yeah.
Matt, because you're not.
That's why you don't set a price.
And then you're not going to, but you have some residents in this town that pay $170, $175 for every 3 months.
You do, and they can go to other waste haulers.
But for the same waste hauler, the guy across the street pays $65 for the same service.
And there's probably, again, reasons why that is.
What would be the reason? They have the exact same service.
I'm not a waste hauler company.
And they're across the
So
street.
I don't know what the reason would be.
And it's $110
Maybe it's
difference.
Joe Schmo's friend. I don't know.
Right.
But again, you're not in the waste hauling business, neither am I.
And then,
Well,
so
here's what I would suggest, because there is value to it, and the point is, at this point in the year, we're approaching the spot where we're going to start crafting a budget for next year. The challenges we run into is managing the large waste drop point program in the park. The leaf bag distribution and collection is an issue, and it's one way or the other every year. We were talking about it earlier. Is the last 5 years I've been involved with it, it's that it got cold much later in the year, and so after we had scheduled all the leaf bag pickups, then the leaves fell off the tree after we'd already ran the course of the town. This year,
snowed the first weekend in December and everything fell immediately and there's a run on. So we have an issue with, trying to schedule and program our staff to be able to do it regardless. And
Dave, and we've also got the problem if the EPA is going to be breathing down our neck, on what is going into the drainage. If we don't have that program, and this is just discussion, if we don't have that leaf bag and branch pickup program, we've got the EPA breathing down our neck, wanting to pull our. They would love to fine us for something, right?
Yeah. So I think what you got to get to in the point to be able to decide and what we need from the board is give the direction, because if we're going to retain the leaf bag programs and the pickups and continue to do it with our staff, we're going to budget to get the equipment and the staffing to do it better, more efficiently, and do it right. If we're not going to be able to do that, we're not going to drop that kind of investment into equipment to be able to do it, or staffing. My preference is to get our street crews working on our streets, and not picking up branches.
Or parks. Agreed.
And get them, working where they're most effective and trained to work right now. There are people out there that can pick up leaves and do it regularly and already have the equipment with it. So what I would suggest is that you do go ahead and issue the RFP to solicit the proposals. At a minimum, you're soliciting a proposal from a franchise waste hauler, see what the bids come back in. Yep. Then you've got more solid information in front of you, and you're gauging, are we really providing either a service enhancement or a cost enhancement that you can't get as a single resident? And that's some of that pricing leverage that Brett's talking about, where whatever the relationship you have with your current provider, the easiest thing is to switch and you get whatever the offer is right now. Well, you can switch back and forth every year, or you can leverage purchasing power and do it as almost as a conglomeration where you're doing it everywhere. So I would issue an RFP to solicit a single company to manage the pickup, manage the recycling. Single stream seems to be the most likely use that a resident would use. It's a little bit more difficult for a hauler to handle than physically separating everything. But you put it in there. You put, okay, here's the top level service, and included in that is we have a leaf pickup program. And these are the designated times of the year when leaf bags are picked up free of charge. If you want to put, yard waste out at any point during the year, get your sticker and do it just as you're doing now. But in October, November, and December, we pick up leaf bags for free. If they're sitting out there, you pick them up. So you put that into all the franchise agreement that you're writing out there and say, in order to bid on this, you have to be able to do this, this, and this. And you can even include branches in there to be picked up, 1 week every month or whatever frequency you decide. Put it out there, get the bids, so then you're not debating on what if, what might be. Right. You see, and you give these guys that do this the opportunity to say, look, for that customer base on that confined of a routing plan where we have everything in it, here's the offer we can make. That's when you decide if you accept the offer or not. And it may come back that you look at it and say, you know what?
It's not for us.
It's not for us.
And I'm still going back to fairness to the people, because whatever the company we may use, if we go to a company way and there's problems that they won't fix, still come to us, nothing can be done. They don't have that option to go to a different waste hauler, because we as a village stuck with and went with one company. And that's the problem I have.
They're out there.
There's no backup. And that's it. I mean, you can say, well, you can write it in the contract, but that's not the point. The point is to have a backup, to have a couple backups like people already do. It's not set where or who you have to use, and that's what you should be able to choose from, who you get to use and who you don't.
I think you're probably going to want to see what the see what the bids come in, and then evaluate. It's like any decision you're going to have. You're going to have pros and cons on every one of them, and you're going to evaluate what that risk is. And when you publicize, here is the rate, that is offered, and for these services, you're going to hear people. He says, you know what, we want you to vote yes for that. We want you to vote no for that. but you got to go through the process of getting the information. And the sooner you get the information, the sooner we have a direction, the easier it becomes for us to start budgeting and, you know, trying to do staff allocations for next year. And like I said, we're not equipped to fully handle the yard waste programs that we handle. Just give us the clear indication that we're going to continue it, or we found an avenue on some other way to do it, and that we're going to staff appropriately and equip appropriately to be able to do it.
Yeah. So what I think we should do is we go after the RFPs, but we do it in a tiered structure, right? We say, okay, for the full meal deal, so to speak, right, which would include recycling, waste hauling, you know, waste pickup, the branch and leaf pickup, and
big item pickup,
and big item pickup once or twice a year. That would be top tier, right? And then step it down, removing one thing, a la carte kind of thing, just so we see what the pricing differences would be on a.
Because I'm almost guaranteed you will find some firms that do not want to deal with branch pickup.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
So
that's
they'll all reject giving you a full price even for the branch pickup, but you have to be able to give them the a la carte.
But
what you can get
right.
And what the price is.
But I think we have to offer. We have to know what we would have to know every aspect of this, right? Because I mean, the branch pickup is, you know, it's key to keeping our village looking good, right? I mean, we really do need that, whether it's us or somebody else providing that service.
But is it now time to look for an entrepreneur? If you look around town, you see as many lawn care businesses going up and down the street with the 5 lawnmowers and stuff. Are we offering a brand new business for Chatham where someone can come in and that's what they do?
We could be.
Branches, trim up branches, take them with them to their facility, and do what with it.
Or they.
Well, there's tons of people doing that. My dad's bought his own sawmill now, so I mean, he can, you know.
So take them. Where's your dad live?
not here.
Where should we be dropping our branches off?
But there's tons of plenty of entrepreneurs that could easily, you know, tree cutters and all that. But no, I agree with Trustee Mann on the a la carte.
That we get back on the first one, then we start passing. Okay, so what is it going to cost for somebody to handle all the branch pickup? You know, what would that cost us? And
I would love to see the branch pickup be nothing more than if a tree falls in a street,
you guys clean it up.
Cut it down and clean it up. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do we draft the RFP?
We'll put it together.
Okay.
Christine's got it half written over here. I mean, she's almost done right now.
Smoking.
But we will put something together. I think there's
RFP doesn't hurt anything.
That wheel has been invented already. At least something.
So are we missing? Can you kind of run through the list? And I know the branch. Trying to get somebody that's going to incorporate branch pickup.
That might be tough, but
we ask. There might be pie on the
right.
Yeah, it might be pie in the sky thing. But are we missing anything else that this should cover in here? Recycling, waste pickup, leaves,
waste pickup, large item pickup at least twice a year.
Dumpster day.
Yeah, something along those lines. You know, to replace the fall cleanup that we do.
Is the battery pickup I know. Is it like the electronic?
Well, and the
specialized.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of that's different than all the other items that we've already.
All the
said.
ones I've seen have included those.
Toxic material.
Like for that's a sanitary system.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking more along the lines of paint. You know, those types of things. The things that we. You know, medicines. We can't
beyond just the regular branch pickup. For the emergency pickup of like branches. Like, is that, would that be?
I think, you know, storm responses, anything that are power lines, anything that's, you know, causing immediate blockages, streets, those are always going to be us anyway, because we're going to be the ones that can respond, you know, faster than.
But if a storm comes through town and knocks a bunch of branches down in your backyard, don't drag them out front and expect the village to pick them up if we go down this route.
Right.
Call the waste hauler. Say, hey, I've got branches.
Yeah, okay. So you would need to include the emergency in addition.
No,
just branch pickup.
It would all be included within the branch pickup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like I said, I think that a lot of waste haulers aren't equipped for that and may shy away.
Yeah, you may not get any response on that portion.
Might not, but
Yep.
we won't know.
That's a separate business.
You know what, if I was one of the big waste haulers and I wanted this town, I would partner with somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody that has those
Sub-
capabilities and say, you're gonna be
There's also, I mean, and to your concern, Matt, on, what happens if you're not performing and people don't like it. They're not indefinite contracts. Every time they're rebiddable, there's a time frame on it. And I think these guys are going to look at, okay, what's the initial time frame that you're looking for a contract in? And, and if they say, look, the branch thing is really important, here's the time frame. Here's, they'll go through and say, okay, in order for me to meet that requirement and include that in my bid, here's what I have to have equipment wise. How do I amortize that over the time of this contract where I can,
Yeah, but I'm not saying I would support it either way, but I want all the information.
I want to see it.
Okay.
I'm more
I want all the
interested.
information.
Yeah, and I want to be able to present that to others and let them weigh in.
I think
What do you think of after we get some of that stuff together, we just have a public hearing for it and allow people to come and give comments?
You can do several things. I mean, one of the simplest one was right what SMTD did when they were looking at, when they were looking at running the
Do a survey
bus routes
monkey?
down here.
I was going to suggest that. Just put out a survey monkey and let.
we can make the public meeting during the utility committee. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of the.
Several. Do it.
So there's options, but
Yeah, you could have-
that, Mr. Chair, is that the consensus? You guys want us to go ahead and?
Yes, I'd like
Let's get
to
the information
yeah.
together.
Get the information together so we can make an informed decision.
Can we review the RFP before it's put out?
Yeah, we
Oh, yeah.
Easy to see the drafts. Make sure we don't miss anything that you guys want to know about. So.
Great. Trustee Detmers, you're good.
We'll get
Yeah,
your
again,
input
with your-
when we get to public comments on village business. Sure.
This is
Oh, I'm sorry.
And there's a time for
And
that.
and we will. I'll call on you when we get to village comment, on village business. Your second thing.
Next item is common areas. That's another big problem that we have. We have subdivisions where there's supposed to be homeowners associations.
Fox Creek.
There are not.
Fox
And,
Creek.
Fox Creek is one of them. And I got 2 quotes for the 2 big drainage areas on what it would take to go in and clear those out. The one that's behind the plaza, that one was $10,000. And the one that's down, the bigger one that's on the other side of the electric substation was $20,000. Just to go through, cut out all the trees, stump all the stuff out, and get it back to the way that it's supposed to be. Now that's initially. After that, you're probably going to talk maybe $1,000 a month to be able to keep them maintained if you're hiring outside. Or do we want to turn around and try to go down the route? And that was the other thing that was on there, was the service areas, where we would start assessing all the residents in those subdivisions that are required to maintain those common areas, and they're not doing that. A fee to be able to pay for this.
What neighborhoods would be responsible for those 2 areas?
Well, I think we would have to go through and put a list together. 2 of them that come off the top of my head, Fox Creek and Wellington.
When you say the common areas, are we referring to the swells as well, or just the drainage
I think it's
ponds?
everything. So like if you have a concrete swell and there's wheat grass and debris and stuff in it, I think those need to be cleaned out on a regular basis. If not, it's going to run into the sewer system and then we're in trouble.
Right, and with that said, with some neighbors that maintain theirs and others do not, would they all be assessed the same tax?
No, I think if some neighborhoods have homeowners associations and they enforce those rules, then I don't think you would assess someone that.
Right, but like, let's say, for instance, Fox Creek, if they don't have a homeowners association and
Aren't willing to do
80% of the people clean their swale and 20% don't, I would hate to penalize the 80% that do because, Steve over there doesn't want to do it.
Answer me this, and maybe you gotta have Ryan and Christine or Jeff look closer. How are we addressing it in our code enforcement? Because some of these things, seem to me that we could take down a code enforcement. That's down that route. You know, when it's specific to a swale in an area behind somebody's house, you got some of these are clearly on their property lines. Are we set up enough that we could enforce it? And if not, what do we need?
We are and we do. If we have a person that we can go back and tell them they were in violation. The problem is when you're dealing with a common area.
Right, and that's what I'm drawing a distinction here between the two things. We don't have
The swales, Ryan does send people notices and tells them, look, you've got weeds growing on the back of your fence that are 4 foot tall. That's in violation. You need to come out and clean it out. The problem is, in a lot of cases, people have fences and they don't have a gate cut in there. So now they have to go to the end of the block, walk up the concrete swale, and clear out that debris. Well,
but what about the homeowners that have covered their swales over? We don't do anything about those.
Yeah, and again, to talk more about what Ryan's able to do, you know, we've asked him to come look at a few spots, and he has a difficult time because he can't enter their property without permission. So you have to get somebody in the neighborhood or, you know, in an adjacent area that would allow them to. It's such a hurdle for Ryan to do that. And then I know that there are others that just aren't cleaning it up and nothing's happening to them. Yep. And I feel like that's the hammer that needs to be dropped, because damn forbid if I get penalized because the one guy down the street doesn't want to do it. Like that, I don't think that's fair at all. And I think the common areas within an un-HOA'd, you know, subdivision, that's up to the subdivision to do. If they don't want to form an HOA, then I think the village or somebody should pay to clean it up, and then all those members of that subdivision are penalized. But I completely disagree with.
I don't think we can do anything with the swales behind the houses, because except if there's tall grass, because it's private property.
Even if we did this agreement and
it's private property.
Yeah, but you know what happens is, say for instance, if we got a house that's in foreclosure in summertime, okay, and the grass grows 2 feet,
yep,
and the neighbors complain, and we have a tough time getting the bank or the realtor to come out and take care of it, we will go out and mow that, cut it down,
right,
and then put a lien.
Yes, and absolutely should, just as the trees in the swale and everything. Yes.
We can't do that for the common areas because
you don't have any
your name on it or your
right. I feel like we should blitz the swale area, because I know that there's tons of spots in the village of Chatham where people are not maintaining them, and whether or not you have a gate, that's up to you, but you're responsible for it. And if your grass exceeds the ordinance, then look out, because here comes Dewey, and we're going to clean this crap up. And
I heard Dewey volunteer.
I'll do it. I'm serious.
Like, I'm really
passionate about it.
If they dump their grass clippings in that swale, there's nothing you can do about it, because that's a private owner.
Well, there is, because
the next guy, you don't know which one threw it in.
Well, so my concern is this: they dump their stuff in there, the swale backs up, water floods my basement. Do I get to go after my neighbor, or do I come after the village? Because
you have to sue your neighbor.
Go after your neighbor.
Even though it's your swale.
Correct.
No, it's not our swale.
It's your property owner's swale.
There isn't property owner.
You own half of it, your neighbor across the way owns the other half.
So I would sue him for his half.
You would have to sue him.
You have to sue the person that you knew threw the stuff in there.
The guy that's upstream.
Yeah. You would sue that property owner for forcing water on your property.
And you see what you can get to stick.
There's the attorney. Sue everybody and see who's left.
But to Trustee Detmer's point, I mean, it is an issue, and I have neighbors. It's an issue over there where it's not a HOA. I mean,
you have to sue them.
I think the
don't
village.
Want to be litigious, you know, but
that's the only way you can get them to do anything. The neighbor behind us, because our code says you have to put swales in, it doesn't say you have to maintain them. So the neighbor behind us filled his with dirt. He put it in, got the inspection, then filled it with dirt, and now all his water comes to us.
That's the question I'm asking you. Do we have code enforcement on that? Because it is a entry point into the sanitary system.
We don't allow that, but somebody did.
So then what's the penalty?
So I can sue him.
And we don't allow that now. Okay. I'm not saying that the predecessors didn't allow that, and that person may have a letter from an engineer or somebody here saying that, look, I got it okayed by this person.
But
I know that's happened.
it has to be where I have to sue them. So somebody down the block did sue and they won very easily, but it cost them a lot of money. And so you have to, as a homeowner, have to think, do I want to spend the money to sue my neighbor who had nothing to do with it? The builder and developer did it. Or do I just want to keep taking on their water? But that's the problem with the swales. Now, the common area that you're talking about, I think, would be assessed to the subdivision. Just like where I live, we have 6 acres we have to take care of. And our homeowners' fees, that's what they pay for. If we didn't...
It's not substantial.
No, but if we didn't have...
But if you look at their common area, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's all that rocky area as it comes into Manor.
No, I mean your cost.
Correct. It's $100 a year for our HOAs.
It was going to be $40 a year for Fox Creek, and they said no.
And that was, that was like to Pat's comment on there, keeping that one area between Independence and Cougar Ridge, you're $1,000 a month, and there are 500 some houses in Fox Creek. $2 a month during the summer, this problem goes away.
Right.
And again, my holdup with the special service areas is we're going to jump right into another area that we're not fully equipped to handle. And so our only response is you're going to have to contract the entire thing out to somebody.
Or do we take control of it ourselves, get our own crews in here? I get the equipment and the money that comes in from those.
Or do we put this up and we say to those neighborhoods, we send a notice out to those neighborhoods, this is your option. You can form a homeowners association and take care of this, or we will take care of it and we're going to assess every resident. If we can. I don't know if we can legally.
You're going to probably get more action in that fashion here. So my recommendation would be is to identify the ones that, and it's not just those that don't have a homeowners. There's some areas that have inactive homeowners associations that have common area issues. Swales aside, because I think that's a different issue.
Right.
But the common area portions where there's the big drainage or, the retentions, ponds.
Yep.
Jerry, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
He left the racetrack, so
Yeah, I think he was racing a ninja.
No, I was actually at Lowe's getting a ladder so I could reach the smoke alarm that's beeping that's 14 feet up.
Okay. Don't let us interrupt.
Yeah,
Sorry.
one question I've
Go
had
ahead
from
and
the homeowners.
get the areas that we need and find which neighborhoods there are. And at a minimum, get the ballpark estimate on what it would take to bring them back, and then what the maintenance would be, and let's notice it. And it may be more efficient for us to provide assistance to areas that don't have homeowners associations on actually getting them formed, as almost as an arbitrator, helping them work through the differences and showing them at a minimum you've got to be able to take care of this area and this area, and what you do beyond that, from dictating what color everybody's shutters have to be, is all on you, and you can do as little or as much of that as you want. But at a minimum, we got to figure out how we do that. We may be more effective to help kind of arbitrate some of those discussions.
Agree.
Get them formed and get them operating. I don't want to be taking on maintenance of somebody else's property.
I'll get a list together of those, and do you want me to try to get a quote of all those different common areas for each one individually? That might be easier than to approach a homeowners association.
You got to be able to tell. I mean, you can go in there and say to whoever you're getting a quote from, here's the areas within this subdivision. Give me what it would take to take care of that subdivision. And you're going to run into two different things too, because if the village is doing it, we have prevailing wage laws. We have a whole set of other different things that, in case after case, increases the price. If the homeowners association is doing it on its own as a non-governmental entity, can contract with a lot of people that we can't necessarily contract with. So our number will be higher than what an association can do on their own.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and maybe that's something where, we take that information, we provide that to those neighborhoods that
then say, here's how we'll help you facilitate getting this.
Yeah, we'll help.
Yeah.
But it's in pretty much it. We don't want to clean it up, but it's in everybody's interest. We got to figure out a way to do it. And it's to our benefit as a village to help you get formed so that you're taking care of it. And it's your interest to not pay the village to take care of it because you can do it cheaper.
Agree.
We're good?
Yep.
Yep.
One last thing. Ryan had called me last week and asked me about when we had a water main breakout here on Route 4. We don't have a piece of equipment big enough to bust up the depth of the concrete and then dig down into the rock to be able to get down to where that water main is at. That's why we called Petersburg in. And in turn, we have to hire someone like Kinney Construction to come back and fill that hole in back to IDOT's interstate
specifications
standards. So they come back and they compact it and they put all the rock in and compact it again and then turn around and either pour concrete or put the asphalt in to get it up to the same level as what it was before. So when we only do that on Route 4, or if the height is so much lower than what our equipment will be able to reach, or we have to put cages down in there. We have some caging, but if we have to go really, really deep, we don't have an excavator that can reach down that deep to be able to get to the water lines or the sewer lines. So in that case, we have to call for help.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, matrix and the evaluation process.
So, yeah, we talked about that the last meeting, I think. Anyway, so for the matrix, I know it's been a while, and I know we kind of went on pause because of the comprehensive plan survey process. So I kind of wanted to just ask if the gentleman with that company could send us a report on what they've done so far, and then and also outline the scope of work that's left to do and what it would take. So once we get the results back from the comprehensive plan survey results, this is what they're doing first, or and how much time it's going to take, just to get an understanding of, since it's been a little while. I know we talked about that, but just if he could send us something written, just so we're aware.
And Molly with Planning Commission is going to give you guys all an update on where everything is here shortly. So we're getting to a spot where we're starting to be able to refine the timeline on when those surveys so we're having UIS and the Planning Commission and everybody coordinated on doing that. So
they're getting ready to send out the questionnaire, but I asked her to send the questionnaire to all of
us
to beforehand so that you can see it. But I will touch base with Alan and let him know that it looks like it'll be sometime after the first of the year before we get all that questionnaires back and responses tabulated.
Mm-hmm.
If you still want a written update of where they're at and what they've done so far, I could probably go back and look at that kind of matrix graph of what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Because they did stick to that. They've done those steps.
Okay.
They came down, they spent 3 days here, and they interviewed a bunch of staff. And it was staff that they had requested to talk to. It wasn't like I picked them or anything like that. But they looked at all the different job descriptions and talked to the people that they thought they needed to talk to.
And one of the things that, I could benefit from as being the newest trustee is just what's left within that contract. And then I know that they may not know their start date, but they might know that these 7 things need to be done next in this order, and that to go from step 1 to step 2 is going to be 3.5 days, and step 4 to 5 is another 11.5 days, or whatever it is. And I think that would just give us an idea of what is in scope. And then once it starts, depending on these other things, when should we expect completion, and what will that completion look like? Yeah, especially like if we were to notate 1 through 3 are done, and 4 is the next thing. It would just help me understand.
Could you, when you send that out to him, send it to us all, just so that everyone's on the same page? All right. The second part of that was the evaluation process, where we talked about surveys. And my thought with that, we can just follow up later. But it was just kind of with the thought of doing a planning stage with us, and it's more of the board being more engaged, I think, with our village leadership and understanding and being helpful in that process and knowing what's going on and the goals going forward. So
I was under the impression that he would talk to us as board members, but we haven't. Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember what.
Check it back. Look back at that. Maybe it may be blocked on there too.
Because I thought he said that in the presentation.
He did.
But he probably would want to talk to you after he sees the public survey, so they can formulate questions and say, well, the public is asking for this. What do you guys see?
Right.
If they're asking for this, is there a funding source available to be able to do that? So it makes sense if you do all that stuff. They've done it before. They're doing it in a logical.
Yeah, well, and they've done it nationally and in the state too.
All right. ADA Transition Plan Committee update.
Terry, you got it?
Terry?
You fell off the ladder.
Terry?
Great.
He's at the racetrack.
Distracted him and came down off the ladder.
Bueller?
Yeah, I'm back.
Found the mute button.
ADA Transition update.
Well, basically, we met last month for rediscuss. Right now, I'm down here in Florida. It should be on schedule.
Working hard, or hardly working.
For next Tuesday, and hopefully I'll be able to call in again without as much else going on. So not a whole lot there, but we are moving forward. I do know there was a discussion I had with, I guess it was Dewey, as far as Massey and Massey, as far as taking a look at our overall park plan, where we may want to head, what kind of condition our parks are in, and so forth. And if we do go with something like that, I definitely would like for them to maybe take a look at the various facilities within the park as far as ADA compliance and, where we need to try to head to make sure we're trying to be as inclusive as we can be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Utility Oversight Committee discussion, that's going to be the 10th, so we've got nothing new to report from the last one. Public comments on village business. Andrea?
One of the things I wanted to mention about the changes in the trash pickup. Number one, are you going to float this in front of the people that are customers to ask their opinion before you pick somebody?
Well, that's what we talked about, was having a public hearing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, we're talking. Probably. We probably do it more than
yeah,
once.
we'd have to.
Did we discuss on that? Maybe even doing a Survey Monkey on that?
Yeah. There's ways to
do several different things.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And I had something else, but it's gone.
Okay.
About the discussion you had about cleaning up, the subdivisions. Our subdivision's pretty good about all of that, but there's always that half a dozen people that refuse, absolutely refuse. You could sue them, you could do anything you want, and they will not clean up their property.
Right.
And I don't know what recourse there is.
Your HOA is still pretty active.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the better ones.
Yeah. It's very good.
You've got the nice common area that's in the middle of
And you've got the residents there that will mow that area. I know.
Everybody mows the common ground that's near their house.
Yep.
And we all go out and work. We have work days in the spring and fall where we put the riprap around the ponds and stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing I haven't been able to convince them to do is to put sprayers in the ponds, because they gave me all kinds of grief about it, because they said, well, where are we going to plug it into? And now you can buy them on batteries. So all you have to do is tie a rope to it, drift it out, let it run, and change the battery. Because that would take care of the mess that those ponds are, because they're
It's
or
stagnant.
duckweed.
Stagnant.
Yeah.
Stagnant, yeah.
Batteries
It's a
last,
simple thing.
do the batteries last for like a year?
Probably are year long.
You got that little charger. You
Yeah,
gotta
they
put it
should.
back.
Everyone signs up for a day. It's your turn.
Well, it doesn't matter what.
Wind.
What fuels it, as long as we get the mess out of the ponds.
Aerated.
Yeah.
All right, schedule of meetings, see village board schedule of meetings for all other scheduled meetings. Next committee of the whole is December 11th, 6:15. We do have a reason to go under closed session under the collective bargaining, collective negotiation matter, 2C2. I have a motion.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
So motion was made by trustee Mao, seconded by trustee Mann. All those in favor? No, everybody has to, yeah, roll call.
Trustee Mann.
Yes.
Trustee Fountain.
Yes.
Trustee Detmer.
Yes.
Trustee Mao.
Yes.
Trustee Scherzo.
Yes.
Chairman Gerger.
Yes, and there will be no business after.
I'm going to stop the recording.
And
I'll call you.
Matt, are you going to call me back?
I'll call you back on my